Hello, everyone, and welcome to our latest webinar. I am Laura, Head of Marketing here at Build Empire, and today we're diving into a topic that every training provider eventually faces: scaling. Now, before we dive in, I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to get themselves here and get settled. So, in the meantime, here is a little bit of housekeeping. We are live here on LinkedIn. If you're watching this on YouTube, then it's not live, but please do still feel free to use the comment section to share your thoughts. I will be keeping an eye on our comment section here on LinkedIn. So if you do have a question for me or for anyone else who might be watching, do feel free to pop it in. Now, if you're here, that probably means you've already seen some success as a training provider. Maybe you've got learners coming in, courses filling up, and word of mouth is strong. That is absolutely fantastic and well done. But here is the problem: what worked when you had 50 learners does not work when you hit 500. And equally, what worked when you had one great trainer doesn't work when you then have 10. The truth is, training providers don't fail because they lack any sort of demand. They fail because they just don't know how to scale. Um, so today we are going to cover a few things. The first is why scaling is absolutely necessary if you want to grow sustainably. We'll also cover how to measure whether you're really scaling and you're not just staying busy. We'll go through the key reasons that training providers struggle to scale and some of the proven strategies that can help you break through some of those barriers. Cool. Right. Sound good? Right. Well, I'm going to assume that everyone is here. So let us just dive straight in. So, firstly, why is scaling so important? It's a big question and it might seem like a bit of a silly one, but not everyone necessarily wants to grow. And sometimes we can confuse scaling with just being sort of busy. There's a few key reasons why scaling is so important. So, first is the demand versus capacity gap. You may already be actually experiencing this. So, you might find that you've got more learners who want your courses than you can actually handle, but adding more learners just means more admin, more stress, and often more mistakes. The second is profitability. A lot of training providers confuse being busy with being profitable. You can keep enrolling more learners, but if every new cohort that you bring on creates more manual work and requires more trainers, your margins don't actually improve. You're just working harder for the exact same results. Third is the learner experience. When you grow without scaling, cracks can often start to appear. Learners get inconsistent experiences, onboarding can get quite messy, and your reputation can start to suffer. And fourth is your team. Trainers and staff burn out really fast when growth is sort of chaotic. So, scaling is what can help protect your people and protect your culture. So, scaling isn't just about growth, it's actually about sustainable growth that you can describe as profitable, consistent, and it protects your learners and your staff. So, now let's talk about how you measure whether you're actually scaling. So, here are some key KPIs that we recommend looking at. The first one is learner capacity growth. So, basically, are you able to take on more learners without hiring in direct proportion? If not, you're not scaling. The next one is operational efficiency. So, how many staff hours does it take to run a single cohort, for example? If that number goes down over time, you're scaling. But if that number goes up, then you're potentially just adding chaos. The next one is consistency scores. So, this might be learner satisfaction, course completion rates, or even NPS. But the goal of it is to see consistency across all the cohorts, not just ones that are run by your star trainer. Next, we've got revenue versus margin. It's not enough to just grow revenue, your margins need to improve as well. So, true scaling means that you earn more profit per learner as you grow, not less. A really simple way to measure this more effectively is to build a simple scorecard that you can track these with. So, even just 3 to 4 metrics that you update monthly, that can show if you're scaling or if you're just running faster on the hamster wheel. All right, so if scaling is, so important, then why do so many training providers fail at it? Well, we tend to see four common reasons. The first one is manual operations, so that's a really good place to start. For a lot of training providers, the business still runs on spreadsheets, email chains, and last-minute fixes and rush arounds. At first, it feels fine. If you've got 20 learners, you can just about keep track of everything. But here's where the problem comes in. When you then grow to 200 learners, those spreadsheets suddenly become a nightmare. Someone's copying and pasting names between systems, another person is manually emailing reminders, and a small mistake like sending the wrong Zoom link, that can suddenly create a really big headache. And if one of the staff members who owns the spreadsheet is off sick, then the whole process stalls. So it's really fragile, it's error prone, takes away the focus from what really matters, which is, delivering a really good learning experience. Next, let's talk about our star trainers. So every training business has one or two people who just make everything work. They're really experienced, they're charismatic, they carry a lot of the delivery, on their shoulders. And honestly, that's fantastic until it's not. Because here's the issue. When your whole learner experience depends on a handful of star trainers, you're never going to be able to scale. One group of learners will get an amazing experience with your best trainer, while another group has a completely different and maybe not so positive experience with someone else. And then what if your star trainer leaves? Suddenly, the quality of your entire business is completely at risk. Scaling isn't about cloning your best people or expecting your other people to become as good. It's about building systems, frameworks, and processes that allow every trainer to deliver consistently at a high level. Now, let's look at learner experience. So, when you're small, it's easy to stay on top of communication, but as you grow, things start to fall between the cracks. Learners might get different instructions from different trainers. Onboarding can feel kind of clunky, so you get one form here, another form there, course materials show up late in their inbox. And here's the real danger: inconsistency really erodes trust. Even if your course content is, completely world class, learners will remember the friction, confusing emails, the missed reminders, the sense that things aren't quite joined up. The bigger that you get, the more fragile that this becomes. So, without a standardized process, every new learner adds more chances for miscommunication. And that's when your reputation starts to really, really suffer, right when you need that positive word of mouth to fuel your growth. And finally, let's talk a little bit about leadership. So, what we see all the time is leaders who are basically just constantly in firefighting mode. Their days are spent solving urgent problems, covering for a sick trainer, fixing tech, chasing payments, instead of actually, building the business. But it is completely understandable when things are really busy. You can get sucked into delivery and then, of course, troubleshooting. But here is the truth: if you're always working in the business, you never get a chance to work on the business. And the cost is potentially massive. Innovation stalls, opportunities get missed. Your team starts waiting for you to step in rather than building any kind of ownership themselves. And eventually the business plateaus, not because there isn't demand, but because the leadership energy is locked in survival mode instead of growth mode. So scaling really requires a shift, that like step back, creating a system, designing for growth, not just reacting to fires every day. So these are some of the issues that are holding training providers back. But the scary part is that most don't even realize they're stuck until growth stops completely. So going on to something a bit more positive now, we know the issues, but how can we fix these issues and start to scale? Well, let's look at 5 key strategies. And as we go through each of these, I'll do a little run through of how you can actually implement it, because we hate webinars where you get told the obvious, but you don't actually get real insight into, improve and get better. So the first one is automation. Um, Automating your operations is basically the fastest way to break through scaling bottlenecks. You stop wasting human energy on tasks that technology can frankly do better. Things like scheduling enrollments, reminders, progress tracking, they don't need to be done manually. The more time your team spends on admin, the less time they have to focus on learners. And every manual process is a chance for errors. Someone forgets to send an email, name off a list, and suddenly the learner experience takes a hit. When you automate, you take that weight off of your staff. The right systems send automatic reminders, onboard learners consistently, and keep everything running in the background. That frees your team up to do what they do best: teaching, coaching, and supporting learners. And that's where the real value is. So, how to implement this? I clicked into this a little bit too soon. That's okay. So, how much of your week do you spend on things like sending emails, chasing people to complete training, pulling reports, or sorting out schedules? If you're like most L&D pros or training providers, it's probably a lot. And here's the thing: most of that work is repetitive, it doesn't really need you. So here are some easy automations that you can add into your workflow to make life a little bit simpler. And remember, your LMS should actually be doing most of these as part of your core functionality. So if you're missing any, you're not using the right learner platform. So I've got 10 automations here for you, and these are broken up, as you can see on the screen, by journey stage. So first off, we've got before training. So our first one is learner onboarding. So imagine every new participant gets a welcome email with their login details, calendar invites, and any pre-work they need to do without you actually sending a thing. That is the perfect start. From there, you go into enrollment and scheduling. So instead of you juggling spreadsheets, you can give learners a self-service booking system. They can choose a session, they'll get an instant confirmation, and it'll drop automatically into their calendar. Moving on into during training. So, our next automation is around communications and nudges. So, simple reminders like, your course starts tomorrow, don't forget to bring this. Those little messages can drastically reduce no shows and make learners feel looked after. The next one that we have is trainer enablement. So, picture this: before every session, your trainers automatically get a bit of a briefing pack: who's attending, their pre-survey results or anything like that, or any special needs. And yes, attendance sheets can be auto-generated too. Then we've got after training. So our first automation in this section is around assessment and feedback. So pre and post course surveys, knowledge checks, quizzes, they're all triggered automatically and neatly collated in one place. Then you've got your certificates and compliance. So as soon as someone finishes, the system will automatically generate their certificate or digital badge and send it out. And if a certificate is due to expire, both the learner and their manager can get a reminder. Obviously, moving on from there, you've then got reporting and insights. So there's no more pulling endless spreadsheets. Instead, you can imagine a dashboard that will update itself, whether weekly or monthly, and even go straight into an inbox without lifting a finger. And last one in this section is content reinforcement. So after training, learners get follow-up resources, micro-learning, or spaced repetition questions delivered automatically so that the learning actually sticks. Lastly, and most importantly, probably, is continuous engagement. So once the training is done, first automation is learner path personalization. So based on someone's role or what they've already completed, they're automatically recommended the next best course. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you if you're an external training provider. Number 10 is client and business management automations. So that means automated client onboarding, usage reports, even renewal reminders. Basically, less chasing and more scaling. So, our second tip is standardization. And here's the thing: scaling isn't about making every trainer a carbon copy. It's about making sure your learners get a consistent, high quality experience no matter who is leading the course. That means creating playbooks, templates, and frameworks that can really help to guide delivery. So it could be standardized slides, activity formats, feedback forms, anything that just helps your trainer deliver in line with your brand and your standards. Without this, every trainer is reinventing the wheel. One trainer runs sessions one way, another does it completely differently, and learners feel that inconsistency. But with standardization in play, you build repeatability. It doesn't kill creativity, it just creates a bit of a backbone so learners always know what to expect and trainers have the support they need to deliver confidently. So here's how we would implement it. Thinking first, if every course looks different, every process runs differently, every trainer delivers their own way, you end up reinventing the wheel every single time. And that's really exhausting. And it also makes it almost impossible to scale. Standardization can fix that. So, how do you actually do it? Well, our first tip, we've got a few little practical steps, but the first one is standardizing your templates. So, you could have one slide deck template, you could have a facilitated guide template, and you could have a participant workbook template. That way, every new course you launch isn't a design project from scratch, it's a quick build using a framework that you know you can trust. You can build your courses in your LMS and house all your documents in there to give one centralized place for all your key documents and content. Next is standardizing your processes. So, for example, you should have a consistent onboarding flow, so pre course email to calendar invite to pre survey, or a consistent post course flow, so thank you message, a feedback survey, and then a certificate. When the steps are always the same, they're easy to automate, they're really easy to train staff on, and they're easy to hand off if you grow your team or if someone leaves. Next is standardizing your data and your reporting. First, you need to decide what metrics matter most, completion rates, learner satisfaction, business impact, and make sure you capture them in the same way for every program. That way, your dashboards and reports are comparable and stakeholders actually get a clear picture. And finally, standardize your facilitator experience. So, you want to give your trainers a consistent briefing pack of who's attending, what the objectives are, how the session should run. It helps to keep the quality high and makes scaling up with multiple facilitators so much easier. Here's the key idea. Standardization reduces decision fatigue when you don't have to reinvent everything. You and your team can move faster, you can focus on quality, and you can scale without the chaos. And remember, your LMS should be able to do all of the above. I said it before. If it can't, you need to be looking elsewhere for the right support. So, our third tip is to invest in the learner experience. Scaling isn't just about adding more learners, it's about making sure the journey feels really seamless as you grow. And that starts from the very first email they get all the way through onboarding, right up to the final assessment or certification. Think about the touch points. Is communication clear and timely? Does onboarding feel simple and professional? The learners know exactly where to go for the materials, support, and feedback that they need. When the experience is smooth, learners not only finish satisfied, they become advocates. They recommend you, they come back for more, and they boost your reputation. In fact, a stronger learner experience is one of the most powerful growth engines you can build because referrals scale your business without additional marketing spend. It's the power of word of mouth. So, how do we implement that? Well, here's the truth. If the learner experience is clunky, if sign up is confusing, reminders don't come, or follow up is inconsistent, then people are going to disengage. And disengaged learners don't complete their training, they don't apply it, they don't come back for any more. So, if you want to scale, you've got to make sure that learner journey is smooth, consistent, and engaging. So, here are a few practical ways that you can hopefully do that for yourself. First is to simplify your access. Learners shouldn't need 6 different logins or 5 emails to figure out where to go. Use single sign on or at the very least clear one-click access within your emails. The next is designing clear, predictable journeys. You need to set expectations right from the start. Here's how long the program's going to be. Here's what you'll get. Here's when you'll hear from us. When learners know what they can expect, they're much more likely to stay engaged. The next tip is to build in some nudges. You can't rely on people remembering basically anything. So send reminders, send encouragement, and celebrate their milestones too. Even just a quick message like, you completed 50%, keep going, or just something super generic can make a really big difference. The fourth tip is to personalize where you can. Now, personalization doesn't mean custom building for everyone. It's going to take far too much time and money, but it can be as simple as recommending the next course based on what they just finished, addressing learners by name in automated emails, or segmenting by role so people only get relevant content. And the fifth tip is to close the loop. So always follow up after training. Share the slides, a recording, or a quick micro learning recap. send out the certificate, and check in a few weeks later with reinforcement material, because learning isn't a one-off event. We know that. The big picture here is this: when learners feel supported and valued, they're going to be more engaged. Engaged learners complete programs, they apply skills, and they advocate for more training. And that is the kind of reputation that lets you scale, because learners start asking for your programs instead of you chasing for them to do it. So, our fourth tip is that you've got to become data driven. One of the biggest mistakes that we see training providers make is scaling purely on gut feel. They look busy, courses are selling, so they assume everything's going fine. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you often find inefficiencies, bottlenecks, or drops in learner satisfaction that just nobody noticed. And that's why you need to track the KPIs we talked about earlier, things like learner capacity, operational efficiency, consistency of delivery, and margin growth. Those metrics tell you where your systems are working and where they're breaking down. Data can take all the guesswork out of the growth. It gives you pure visibility. So instead of reacting when something goes wrong, you can spot trends early and make changes before they even have a chance to become a problem. That is what's going to allow you to scale confidently. So being data driven doesn't mean drowning in spreadsheets. It just means choosing the right data, using it consistently, and letting it guide your decisions. So how do we put that into practice? Well, first, you need to decide what matters. Don't measure everything. Measure the things that are actually moving the needle. That might be enrollment numbers for you, or completion rates, could be learner satisfaction or business outcomes like reduced errors or faster onboarding. Next, you want to standardize how you're collecting that data. If one course tracks satisfaction out of 5 and another out of 10, you can't compare them. So keep your surveys and your metrics consistent so you can see trends across the entire business. Again, this is something you can set up in your LMS, and you just need to ensure people keep it consistent. The third tip is to make your reporting automatic. Set up dashboards or automated reports that land in your inbox or your stakeholders' inbox, even better, on a regular schedule. That way, you're not spending days every month pulling numbers and your data is actually being used. Your LMS should, again, be able to help with this. Reporting is a big part of any L&D pro's job. You need to use your data to improve, not just to report. So ask yourself, what's the story this data is telling me? For example, if completion rates are low, maybe the sessions are too long, or the reminders aren't working and they could be edited and changed. If feedback is great but business impact is unclear, maybe you need to tighten how you link learning back to your performance metrics. And our fifth tip is to share that data. Show learners their own progress, for one, something that people don't often do. Show managers how their teams are doing, and show executives the ROI, something that's quite difficult but definitely important. The more transparent you are with data, the more buy-in you're going to get across the board. So here's the key idea for this one. Being data-driven is about turning learning into evidence that shows what's working, what's not, and where you're going to focus next. Our final tip is scalable teams. So you can't build a scalable business if everything depends on a few individuals. Remember those star trainers that we talked about earlier? Well, they're amazing, but if your business relies on them, you're going to get stuck eventually. Building a scalable team means creating systems, roles, and support structures that allow anyone who joins your team to step in and deliver effectively. It's all about shifting from a culture of heroes to a culture of systems. That might mean documenting your processes, training trainers in your standardized frameworks, or creating clear role definitions so people know exactly what's expected. The goal is to design the business so it doesn't collapse when one person leaves, and so growth isn't limited to the personal capacity of a few. When you build scalable teams, you're basically building resilience, and resilience is what allows you to grow without all of the chaos. So these strategies all basically work together. Automation without standardization just creates faster chaos. Standardization without data means you don't actually know if it's even working. The magic is aligning all 5 tips. And here's the thing: you can have the best tools and processes in the world, but if your team isn't set up to grow with you, you're going to hit a ceiling pretty quickly. So, scaling isn't just about adding more people, It's about building a team that can deliver consistently even as demand grows. So, how do we actually do that? Well, first, you need to define really clear roles. When you're small, everyone wears every hat. But as you grow, that causes chaos. You need to be clear on who owns what: facilitation, content design, client management reporting, so things don't fall through the cracks. Next, you need to create repeatable playbooks. Don't rely on people's memory. Document how things get done, how you run a program, how you onboard a client, how you deliver a virtual session. These playbooks make it really easy to onboard new team members quickly and keep the quality really high. Next, you need to build a bench of facilitators. So, if train and delivery rests on one or two people, you're never going to scale. Developing a pool of trainers that you can draw on with standardized facilitator guides so they can step in and deliver at the same level. Next, you need to use technology as a force multiplier. Your team should focus on high value work, design, facilitation, coaching. Let the systems handle scheduling, emails, and reporting. That way, you don't have to keep hiring just to handle admin. The fifth tip is to invest in your team's growth. Scaling isn't only about serving more learners, it's about growing your own people too. Train your team in new tools, give them the development that they're asking for, new opportunities, and encourage cross skilling. It's only going to benefit you. The more capable and adaptable your team is, the more you can take on without basically burning out. Here's the key idea for here. Scalable teams aren't just bigger teams, they're smarter teams. They're structured, they're supported by systems, and they're empowered to do their very best work. So, wrapping up, let's bring it all together. We've seen that scaling basically isn't optional if you want to do it right. It's the difference between a training provider that burns out versus one that thrives. We've looked at how to measure scale and success, the common traps that keep providers stuck, and the key strategies that allow you to grow sustainably. Here's one quick win you can take away. Pick one operational process that eats the most time, whether it's onboarding or scheduling, and find a way to automate or streamline it this month. Small wins compound really quickly into scale, and we have to bring it back to what we mentioned basically every section. Your LMS should be able to help you achieve a lot of these solutions, and if they don't, well, you need to change provider. I'm not going to give you the big sell. Build Empire is an LMS provider, and we can do all the things I mentioned and so much more. But if you would like to go deeper and see exactly where your training business stands on the scale readiness spectrum, we would love to offer you a free scale readiness audit. We'll look at your systems, your processes, and your learner experience and identify your biggest growth blockers, whether that's a platform you're using, your processes, or your content. So to book that, you can just reach out to us, whether that's on LinkedIn or direct to our website, Build Empire, or to our head of sales, who you can find on LinkedIn, who's Bliss. Thank you very much for joining me today. And remember, scaling isn't about doing more, it's about doing it smarter. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.